sorry if I rushed you there. Okay, we'll do the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call. I see her walking through the door.
Here, I spoke with Miss Atchison. She said she'd be a few minutes late.
Oh,
So only two.
Ms. Atchison
Hello.
here. Mr. Hall, I'm not sure if he contacted anyone, but I heard today that he was feeling poorly, so that might be why he's not here. Mr. Hoag? Present. Mr. Merlington? Present. Ms. Naprowski?
Here.
Mr. Nixon?
Here.
And Pat Conley. Myself, Mr. for some reason, seems weird. Recognition of, well, we don't have a planning official tonight, but we do have Mr. Womack and Ms. Johnson tonight here, city manager and city clerk respectively. We have item 4, motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting. Actually, we have 2 of them for February 7th and for March 7th.
I'll make that motion.
Anything here that we need to address? Or does it look fine to move on? It's good. Okay. Then all in favor of approving the minutes for February 7th and March 7th, 2023, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we have our agenda for this evening, which looks, as we mentioned just before the meeting started, rather light. I have a motion to approve that. Second. Anything that needs to be added or addressed before we move forward with that? Okay, all in favor of tonight's agenda, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. We have an agenda. Public,
I can turn it on. I just didn't know.
while we're trying to fix the technology, I'll open it up for public comments. I don't see a lot of public here at the moment, but we may see some on the screen when we move forward. Well, I hope that no one takes it personally, but it appears that we have no opportunities for public comment tonight. So we'll move on to conflicts of interest. Next parte communication inquiry. Is there anything that we need to disclose before we move on? Hearing none, we'll move on to scheduled public hearings. So item 8 is something we've discussed before so many times that I feel like we did it, but I guess we haven't. We have an ordinance to delete section 32-160 table of uses and delete and remove all references in the code that refer to the rural residential zoning district or the neighborhood business B1 zoning district of the code ordinances for the city of Cedar Springs. I'll open the public hearing. And hearing no member of the public, I will close the public hearing again. Moving on, item 9, site plan reviews. There appears to be none.
We have to make a motion.
Oh, we have to make a motion, sorry. Moving back to item 8AA. I rushed.
Going
So,
for a speed run. I get it.
I'll make a motion to recommend and refer the above ordinance to city council for review and approval.
I'll second that.
is there anything that does everyone understand what we're doing here tonight? We've discussed it so many times. Okay, all in favor of recommending that motion or the motion to recommend?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Now we'll move on and past site plan reviews because there appears to be none. On to other business, a discussion on draft solar regulations. And I'll give Mr. Womack a chance to.
Yeah,
Catch up on
I
that.
could spice up your agendas a little bit more crowds in here to tell you what they think of you, but.
I don't know.
And I should note that there are a couple of site plans coming. We do have 2 parking lot reviews coming. Possibly a family farm and home site plan, so. Working on it, so. We have some notes, let's see if they pop up, there we go. Okay, so I'm on page 12 of your packet. This is the solar regulations that we've been working on again for quite some time. I think this represents the most recent draft from the planner, which I then reviewed and made notes on. So what I was hoping to do today is go through my notes, so that we can address some of these issues and then we can redraft it. We can do your decisions on this now. So, page 12, bottom of page 12. Do we want to address large scale solar collectors? So it looks like we have small scale solar energy collector. And we do have, I guess what I'd call, what's defined there as ground mounted solar energy collector. I didn't know if we want to. Sorry. I'm surprised it wasn't like the
It was worth the
Star Wars
entertainment,
theme or something.
I'm sorry, it's either Legend of Zelda or Mario, so.
So I just didn't know if we want to specifically define what a large scale solar energy collector would be, which would then of course open up the door for I guess specifically defining rules that would apply to large scale versus small scale.
This is the definition. Is anywhere in here, I can't remember where we ended on this, on
So-
whether we would allow large scale.
Yeah, so I think part of the reason we're doing this, because the board wants to basically exclude small scale or significantly reduce the requirements of small scale. So for instance, if you were to have a 3 foot by 3 foot, I don't know, 1,000 watts or something, that would be slightly different rules and requirements versus a ground mounted solar energy collector, which could be acres of property. So I don't know if it's necessary to define large scale solar energy collector is. But I did note that the small scale is defined, so I didn't know if the board thought large scale should be.
Now, Mr. Hoag,
Mhm.
when you were talking about that extra piece of property, is that still considered the small scale that you're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about the side
Okay.
yard.
We're still talking side yard, small scale.
Yeah, because I think this is what this is talking about is if, I don't know if you've ever been to Grand Valley. Grand Valley has a large scale solar collector that powers part of the campus. That is massive. I mean, it's run by Consumers Energy. They do tours for school groups, everything out there. And I think that's what you're referring to here, right?
Well, so if you read the definition of small scale, it basically says, intended to provide energy for on-site uses and provide power for use by owners, etc. That would seem to at least imply that a large scale solar energy collector would be for basically what you're talking about, which is production of energy to be used off-site. I don't know if it needs to be defined that way. And I don't know if defining it would say limit somehow what you could do. But again, I'm just trying to produce some discussion here about whether you guys see anything wrong with defining it or not.
I mean, do we have that addressed with the residential uses with the size limitations though? Isn't that addressed in there?
So I believe the way we've dealt with it is, let's say you have a 66 by 132 yard. You can only put it to within a few feet of your property line. You can't have it taller than X number of feet, so you don't block your neighbors. So on a small scale, we do have it defined. I guess there are ways we could define large scale. For instance, if somebody wanted to buy 50 acres and put 50 acres worth of solar panels out there, would we want to require a larger setback requirement?
We don't have 50 acres for them to buy, right?
Well, we do, but we wouldn't. I'm just saying, if somebody wanted to come in and do a large scale, and maybe that was part of the planner's thoughts, maybe the planner was thinking, well, there is no large space.
Yeah, I don't think there is big enough to do large scale. I think it's just small scale because we're talking about the city.
I think you go into hypothetical here, right? You get some guy
Well,
that
there is
buys
the
a bunch of property
binds the lots, tears down the houses on there, somebody's got enough acreage to put a large scale one on there. Not that is fiscally responsible, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about, could it happen and do we need to find it if it's in there? And I think it wouldn't be a bad thing just to make sure we have some rules in there for the larger scale ones.
I would think in the city of Cedar Springs, would you want large scale at all? I mean, is there
No.
anywhere that you would want large scale
Well-
solar?
School maybe.
Think of a piece of property that's not otherwise buildable. I mean, you wanna put some productive use to it.
True.
So if it's a swamp,
Yeah.
you need to put solar cells above that and still work, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Mr. Conley, you look like you had something.
Well, I was also wondering, I was trying to think if it made any sense, but we routinely take large pieces of property that aren't part of the city right now and add them to the city. So would there ever be a reason why someone would want a 425 or annex a big plot of land to the city that they then would put solar stuff on? I'm not sure if it would make any sense for someone to do that or not.
I think it'd be foolish for them to annex. They're gonna pay more taxes.
But is there any service that we offer that they would want?
Or if Nelson or Solon or Algoma would not permit it in the same way that marijuana is not permitted in those.
Yeah.
areas. So another thing I just thought of is, and I don't know the answer, I need to double check on this. So small scale is seen as kind of like an accessory use to some other use, right? I don't know if we've defined solar as a primary use of a property, principal use. of a
Mhm.
property. And maybe that's the defining factor of what is different between a small scale and a large scale. Cause if you've got, you know, something on your garage or something, it's an accessory of your use of the house. But if you just have an empty piece of property, again, do we wanna have the same setback requirements as would otherwise be required of any other principal use? So for example, in R1 zoning district, you're supposed to have 30-foot setback off the front and rear, 10 foot on each side. So that creates a very small building envelope for a primary building. Which is maybe a good thing because now you can't put a large array in an R1 zoning district, right? But at the very minimum, I should check and see that. Whether we have it defined as a principal use or not.
One thing I also didn't see when I was looking this over and made me think of it when you were talking about small scale is my brother-in-law in Georgia has a few on his roof and he inputs whatever he doesn't use back into the electrical, back into the grid, thank you. So is that still with small scale or do we have to put something in here for that too, or?
So that's a state law issue. Cause my wife and I actually looked doing the same thing for us.
Okay,
But it's something like solar companies can charge you peak rates, but then when you're back feeding into it, they always give you the lowest rates, right?
okay.
So that's more of a them issue, not an us issue.
Well, when you were saying, you know, the small scale is used for the primary use of the house, I was just making sure that if you were back feeding it, we didn't need to add that in or something.
That's how they do the cost offsets for those, 'cause I've looked into solar. My mother has solar in her house and I know there's solar a block behind my house. And I know a lot of that when it's downtime, there's nobody home, they're feeding that back in the system and it lowers their rate. That's how they pay for those.
So do we need to go back to your original question and address that?
Well, so the note I made here is check on whether it's defined as a principal use. Because I think principal use is what's gonna define the difference between a small and a large scale project. Cause by and large, even if you have a large, you know, warehouse or something, and you wanna put a ground mounted, array or something out back, it's not gonna be 1,000 acres, you know? Might be a few acres, and then we could just address that as an accessory use. Matter of fact, I was looking ahead here. So if you go down to bottom of page 14, you'll see commercial and industrial uses. Right. So it does say size limitations. There shall be no more than 10,000 square feet of collector panels on a ground mounted solar energy system. a minimum lot area of blank to establish a ground mounted solar energy system, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know where the planner got those numbers. Maybe that's something we need to look at. Second time. So another one of my notes here at the top of 13, do we want these rules to apply to large scale solar energy collector systems? And I think that was probably upended by what I just read in the commercial and industrial section. So there are rules, I probably just didn't see them at the time.
If we, you know, if we were thinking about some really seriously large scale, cook every bird as it flies over it kind of system, something larger than say 10,000 square feet, wherever the planner got that from. I wouldn't feel comfortable that we have the knowledge to really address that at this moment. So I'd rather err on the side of let's not go any bigger than that until we have more data. But that's up to
I'm just trying to visualize in my head how big 10,000 square feet is.
100 by 100. That helps.
Thank you. So I think the standard lot in the city is about 8,800 square feet. So think of your residential lot, which is slightly bigger than that.
Yeah, you just think that you wouldn't want any large scale allowed in an R1 lot. Cause that would take up where a house could be built.
Well, this is specifically to commercial and industrial.
Okay, yeah.
Even, are we ready even for an industrial lot to have some
Yeah.
large solar plant, which seems kind of weird for Michigan yet, that
Mhm.
we would do that with, like, with the clouds and stuff, but
I
maybe.
think was it photovoltaic panels are getting so cheap now that it makes it worth it even here.
Mhm.
We're not Arizona, but certainly you can still make money if it's cheap enough.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty big ones up north too. Even like Cadillac, Great Lakes has got a pretty big solar farm up there.
I've been seeing the windmills up in the area especially. Those things are gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
My old hometown, but tons in Ludington, where my house used to be as a kid, is now one of those towers. My house.
So I've been keeping track, and there's a couple of townships just east of here, north and east of here, where they're just cats and dogs fighting about whether to allow it or not.
Montana
Sand Lake.
fighting that big time.
Well, because of course, you know, you've got farmers who stand to make a lot of money,
Mhm.
and the neighbors who won't make any money saying, well, I don't want to look at that. Or, I'm not gonna roast the birds, but apparently chop the birds in half as they, you know, go through them. Weird stuff. Okay, so I have a note here under, general regulations in the middle of page 13. Questioning whether we want to add language about causing a nuisance. So, you see in subpart B there, shall be generally neutral in color, substantially non-reflective of light. Installed so the sunlight and glare is reflected, not reflected into neighboring dwellings or onto adjacent roads, etc. And that's all, in my opinion, what would actually cause the nuisance, the reflection of these surfaces. But maybe it's better to add that general language in there, because who knows what a nuisance could be occurred by, you know, these things. I could envision a situation where they're pumping out so much electricity that the wires start humming. You know, and the humming is what becomes the nuisance, but if we don't have the language about humming.
Catch all.
Okay, so now we're down to E and F. Let's see here. Okay, so the language in E and F don't match. If the goal is to allow commercial and industrial uses to use angle adjustment, tracking, etc., let's mirror that language. Also, we may wish to consider requiring commercial uses to follow the same requirements as residential for aesthetic purposes. So let's see here. So E is in residential districts shall be mounted at the same angles of roof, without angle adjustment, without solar tracking, etc. Yeah, so in F, it looks like we're allowing angle adjustment, solar tracking, pole mounting, etc. And do we want to allow that? Do we want to basically exempt commercial and or industrial I could imagine a situation now where McDonald's mounts some, solar panels on the top with solar tracking, angle adjustment, all sorts of things. Is that gonna look out of place in a commercial? You guys have seen, I think it's Independent Bank did mount some solar panels.
Mhm.
But they have the pitched roof and they're fixed.
But I think it's something like a display pack that has a massive roof footprint where they can put it in the middle.
Yeah,
And that's my thought.
that's
is
what
that-
I was thinking.
So that's industrial. So do we want to differentiate between commercial and industrial? Don't get distracted by the wives. Come on. Focus here, folks.
I don't know. I mean, it's a new age and maybe,
Well, I think what I'm saying is I'm not opposed certainly to commercial buildings having solar. But is it going to be aesthetically unattractive? Is it going to be distracting? Is it going to potentially be a nuisance if they're changing their angle all day and being, raised up and down? And is that something that we care about?
They're
I
not,
don't.
they can't be just moving back quickly.
No.
Unknowing moves, so.
Oh, sure, but so. I think part of it is when you allow systems to change their angle and move around. That might create a nuisance for a fixed period of time in somebody else's window. At a different place than you would normally think, right? It adds a whole layer of complexity. Versus if they're just mounted in one way and that's the way they stay.
But haven't we addressed that with the nuisance part about,
Yeah,
to me, that's, if that occurs, then, I mean, this is almost gonna be like a parking lot if it's movable, right? Where you have to have almost a study of the solar panel array as it moves to make sure it doesn't violate the other part of the ordinance.
yeah, and so that's one way you could do it. Require them to submit a study showing that whatever, which of course, that's an added cost, which. And of course, we're splitting here, so this is unlikely to happen, but.
And I think those solar panels, I don't know how much they reflect to begin with, because that'd be defeating their purpose if they're reflecting.
I don't think it's so much the panel as the metal
the
that goes
frame.
around, yeah.
Yeah.
What about instead? What about putting something in that says angle adjustment, solar tracking, things like that, only to be allowed on industrial or commercial flat roof buildings? Instead of, that are bigger than, let's say, 5,000 square or 10,000 square feet. So we're looking at like display pack, CS tool, big buildings like that, where they can get up there and put the tracking. And it's not gonna bother anybody, because those are huge buildings.
Just trying to think, so,
Even Rite Aid.
yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but. Are we trying to say we want your solar panels to be set back off the edge of the roof? So it's in the middle of the roof?
That's what I was kind of thinking. Cause you're looking at these pitched roofs and stuff. Sometimes I don't know how they're going to attach to a lot of those.
No, that's more their problem than ours.
Right.
I don't have a problem if we're gonna allow them to be on a flat roof. I don't think. I already have the ordinance in there.
Doesn't matter that much to me. I mean, it's what everything's gonna move to. I mean, 10, 15 years from now, you're gonna see solar on probably every roof around it.
Could be.
Otherwise, I mean, I get the argument of if your roof is deep enough where what's 3 feet above the roof at the edge is to the bystanders or to people in the area is not at the same angle as something that's in the middle of a very deep roof. But then are we ready to like put trigonometry into all this to figure out what angle you see it from the ground and all that? I'm not ready to say one way or the
Yeah.
other on that. True.
Could it all solar on a commercial and industrial just require a site plan review?
kind of leaning to that, that if
You
you
know,
want to
just-
do more than just have a solid mounted that won't extend more than 3 feet, then bring it to us for review in some way.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was about to say is, I think, or I'll double check at the very least, that we talked about making this a special land use or something.
Yeah.
So it would have to come back for review. Double check.
Yeah.
Then it could be addressed from building to building.
I like that idea.
Double check special.
If it's gonna be the pole mounted movable, if you got a,
Mhm.
if you got a pitched roof, I mean, just like the bank did, I mean, they didn't have to have any permits or nothing to put their solar on their roof, right? They probably just,
For which, the bank?
or, yeah, the bank.
So this is part of why we're doing this right now,
Yeah.
is the bank and 2 or 3 residential houses contacted me and said, we'd like to do this. And I said,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know what the law says. There is like one thing in our ordinances that says we're generally in favor of, doing that. So, I basically, worked it out in such a way that we'd allow it, but under kind of the same guidelines that we're talking about right now. I don't want it to be a nuisance.
Mhm.
Now, again, all the solar tracking and angles and all the other stuff, I don't know if it's gonna be economically feasible for these businesses to do that. Certainly not on a small scale, and not right now. Again, just trying to figure it out for the future. So, my next note is middle of page 14, or C, vegetation. So it currently reads, all vegetation underneath ground mounted solar energy collectors shall be properly maintained so as not to block access to collectors or become a nuisance. I forget the exact height, but I believe these ground mounted can be like 10 feet tall or something, right?
yeah, they're probably 3 foot off the ground. There's a, out on 17 Mile, just before Pine Lake, there's a house on the left that's got a pretty long set. I think the bottom edge is about 3 foot off the ground. Top's probably 8 to 10 feet off the ground.
So I would imagine, like a good garden, you're probably putting wheat fabric and all sorts of stones and stuff underneath. But, do we really want somebody just basically putting them on top of grass and now the grass is 3 feet tall?
Yeah.
So my note here says, probably also want to add that the vegetation shall meet the requirements of the IPMC, which is what our city ordinance is. So does that add an element of, okay, you can do these ground mounted arrays, but they have to be on top of, do something other than grass?
Or if it's grass, it's just gotta be kept mowed. I mean,
Well, yeah, but you know how difficult it is to mow under a bunch of solar arrays. I hate to set somebody up for failure. Because all too often, the problems that me and the code enforcement officer face are people who just do something without forethought to understand that, well, they're gonna have to cut the grass too.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, should I add it in? So it says shall be properly maintained, but it doesn't say according to what standards.
Don't see any problem with we're reminding people that city standards still apply. And then perhaps if they're looking at this before they put their ground mounted system in, they can jog the thought that, hey, maybe I want to put this on something I don't have to mow all the time.
Hear that, Mr. Hoag?
I think you just pour a lot of oil all over the ground.
That's how my dad got rid of trees as a kid.
that's the greatest way to do it.
Okay.
I can't believe we're talking about solar power and then just pour some oil on the ground.
That's how we were raised.
My mom was a hippie, not my dad.
Okay, here's another note, D2, I believe it is. So size limitations, there shall be no more than 1% of the lot area up to a maximum of 1,500 of collector panels and a ground mounted solar or energy system. My note is the average size lot is 8712. 1% would be 87 square feet, which is about 9 foot by 9 foot.
The average,
Small.
Or for a residential lot.
yeah, but I mean, the average lot is not the one that's gonna be putting on a lot of ground mounted systems. Or at least they wouldn't be, we don't want it to be very big on the average lot. If the average lot in the city, which is quite small, wants to put a ground mounted system on, it should be a very small one because it's not gonna fit otherwise. With all the whatever, if you have a much larger than average, then this calculation would still work because then you could put a decent sized one.
So this is specific to residential uses.
Right.
Okay. But I think the biggest lots in the town are about 3 or 4 standard size lots. So what is that, 24-ish, 25-ish? Let's say 25 for 3 lots. What's 1% of 25,000? I'm math magician. So 250 square feet. And then it says maximum is 1,500 square feet. What would 1,500 square feet be 1% of?
150,000
Square feet.
It's multiple acres.
Yeah, so was it 64,000 square feet in an acre?
47,000.
Can't remember. That one I don't have top of my head. I used to know that.
Yeah, all you smart folks in a room, and nobody knows that one.
Well, we have Google now.
Yeah.
GPT or whatever. We could just,
43,560.
there we go. So that's about 3 acres. I don't have anyone in city limits that's got 3 acres.
I have a pretty big lot and I'm less than a half.
Yeah, not residential. I can't think of, well,
Like combined is about an acre and a half.
Yeah.
the only ones I can think of are gonna be really wetland type ones and the ones that are heavily forested. I can't think of a single property.
Even roads,
What?
even roads and out there on Cherry?
Well, not
Oh, wow.
acres.
Well, I mean, even again,
What about the end of Ash? Where that dead
So,
ends?
Yeah,
I
so
don't know where
that,
the city limit is there.
yeah, so the developer on that, I understand wants to put in 6-ish houses. And then the city would probably purchase the rest of it. But, you know, nobody's gonna put one single house on there and then use the rest for solar panels. Okay, so is everybody comfortable with kind of the discussion there? Maximum 87 square feet on a standard lot. Up to 1% for lots bigger than that.
put that back to the napkin. Not that this is about Matt's at all, but it's a helpful as an example. So you have about an acre and a half. is that
I
right?
have 2 lots and I combined they're about an acre and a half.
So then if we did acre and a half, 43,000 times 1.5, so it's gonna be. like that,
Say
about,
7,000.
Or 70,000, so that means you could have about 700 square feet. of solar.
Oh, didn't we already address it with the 1% on there every time?
Right, I'm asking, is the 1% a good amount? Should it be 1.5%? Should it be 2? Should it be less? That's what I was,
1% is gonna be a very small solar.
well, that's what I'm trying to
You know,
figure out, so.
Did
I
Mr.
don't-
Moore put that 1% in there? Is that
Yes.
something he got from other places, or is he
I have no
just
idea.
like rolled some dice and said, that looks like a good number?
I think it was more like a turtle shell and then some feathers and some bones.
Okay, yeah, that's
Shook it
good, yeah.
out.
So for the
I
few,
prefer tea leaves, but yeah, that'll work.
sorry, I didn't talk over you.
You're fine.
For the few instances like this, your potential acre and a half is on the large end of what we have here in the residential. So 7,000 square feet. What's, when you have a ground mounted collector, how big are those numbers? As far as like you said,
I know they come in different sizes, cause you can get like the ones that are like 3 foot by maybe 1.5 feet, but you can also see the giant ones that
10 feet.
are like,
long, or-
yeah, they're like 7 to 10 feet long,
Cause if
right?
it was
And
10
like
feet long.
3 to 4 feet
you-
wide.
You could have an array that was 10 feet long, 70 feet, or 10 feet high, 70 feet long. I
That
mean,
would give you plenty of
That's a-
power, wouldn't it?
Like
that-
they're not blocking each other, right? You gotta be careful with spacing and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, that's the hard part.
How much property do you think you have?
I think, I don't know, is that an acre and a half?
According to my measurements, it's 3/4 of 1 acre.
Well, it's combined, the two.
Yeah.
It's that small?
0.3 and 0.36.
Oh, I guess I'm smaller than I thought.
I'm like spying on you right
That's fine.
Got the Google.
Spy on me. Really, I don't know how much I own.
And I might be off on my.
0.33 and 0.36.
Alright, maybe it was 3/4 together.
Yeah, pretty close.
700, yeah, 10 times 7. In the mythical 1.5 acre,
Well, we gotta go with hypothetical, right? Cause
Yeah.
something like this.
it
could
doesn't
occur.
have to be Matt's, but
Yeah.
if there was a mythical 1.5
Mhm.
acre plot, does that exist in the city?
I
Maybe don't.
see one on Guy Street that's 1.02. That's about as big as you're gonna see.
Is that in the city?
Yeah, that's right on Guy Street between Muskegon and Beach. Got a really big lot. Right on the cul-de-sac. That's a.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's the one on Muskegon in front of the well. That's actually only 0.89.
For a 1 acre lot. That was 42,000 square feet per acre.
Yeah.
So that's 430 square feet, so
That's
10 foot by 43 foot.
that's still pretty big.
That's still pretty big.
Yeah, I think that's just plenty.
And
as
there's
you-
actually
as-
one on Cherry that's 1.29.
Yeah, that's West Cherry, right?
And as we get smaller, we want them to be smaller because they otherwise are gonna overlap.
Well, and of course, you start here, and if somebody really desperately wants something different, they can come and approach you guys and we can potentially change the law at that point.
I mean, I love site plan reviews. It gives us something to do.
Or if I get exuberant, I like them that. We can move on to something else.
There's somebody who didn't show up for like 5 meetings in a
I
row.
needed a break from you, Mike.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm saying.
Let her know.
Spoke at the last second to just be tortured one more time. Okay,
That's why I'm here.
so I think my last note here is on 4. As stated above, 8,700 square feet is the standard size lot. We can make it more difficult by requiring a 10,000 square foot. Or we could set it right at average to simply preclude undersized lots, so. So, this is talking about, do we want to reduce the number of ground mounted solar energy systems? So Mr. Conley, you were saying, well, the average lot's pretty small. At 1%, you're only getting 87 square feet. Do we want to say, okay, you know what? Because the standard lot is so small, we just say no ground mounted for an average lot. You must be 10,000 square feet or larger to have ground mounted. Anything below that has to be building mounted.
I guess what does it hurt if someone's got a 9x9 thing?
Yeah.
Because there are a number of lots in the city that are 5,000 square feet.
And they can have a 5x10. I mean, there's not, it doesn't really matter that much. It's not taking up that much space.
And I don't want to exclude that because if you look at like my house, I am covered by trees, but there's one spot in the back where I might have taken a mini excavator to a couple of years ago. That does get a lot of sun. So I could put, the ground mounted back there versus being on the roof.
Okay.
So you look at some houses, if they're covered by trees on the roofs, but they could get, and they got a small lot, they could get,
Well, so I guess what I'm hearing is just remove this portion at least for the residential uses.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess I would ask the question then. Same question for subpart E there. Number 4, a minimum lot area blank is required to establish a ground mounted solar energy system for commercial or industrial uses. I mean, presumably, if you have a large enough building, you'd probably want to put it on the roof, but maybe they all have a lot identical to Mr. Nixon. There's just one corner in the back corner where they took a mini excavator and now there's sunlight there.
I did not.
Or you got permits for it.
Yep.
So is there a minimum size we'd want a commercial or industrial use to have?
I wouldn't even know what size lots those things are sitting on.
Cause most of those big you know, the big industrial lots we have are almost completely filled with the building. I mean, a lot of them the buildings take up almost the entire piece of land. You know, when you think about display pack and I don't even know what size some of them lots are though.
Well, building and parking lot, they take up.
Well, I was about to say, so there's another question here, and that is, okay, so do you want McDonald's having a ground-based array?
No,
Not that they have space for it.
they don't have space. And also it would block sight of view if they tried to put one in the back, so yeah, it wouldn't work.
I personally could see space situations where they had elevated ground collectors over their parking lot that provided shade to the cars underneath. But I'm not gonna die on that hill.
No.
I'd love to know what world your fantasy is in.
It's in Arizona. It happens all.
Oh, you go down to Florida, you see.
Florida and Arizona, they do it all over the place.
They have it right by Gravity, tap house there on where 96 and the Beltline come together.
Well, I guess I was thinking in Michigan.
Well, that is in
Gravity-
Michigan.
Gravity's-
Yeah, the Gravity Tap House is
Yeah,
right there by Fred Meyer
parking
Gardens.
area?
It's a DOT lot. And then they have covered parking there and the top of those is solar powered.
Really?
It's been there for a long time.
Never once seen that in Michigan.
Well, Cause you don't.
It's the only spot I've ever seen it.
That's true.
You don't go to the tap house,
Oh,
that's.
I should.
Or Fred Meyer Gardens, apparently it's right there.
Mhm.
Okay, I think that's all we had for this ordinance. Correct? Yes. So, I guess I'll take your answers and try to revamp your ordinance between now and Monday.
Get on that.
And or send it to the planner and say, get on that. Okay, you guys have anything else you want to talk about on solar regulations?
You know, like going back to McDonald's real quick, you know, that they do have the area of grass between McDonald's and the bank. There's probably that 30 foot of grass that you could have a solar array that wouldn't be blocking anything. I mean, so I don't know if you want to take it right off the table or not, because there is some spots where it would work. You don't want to stop people from being green.
I don't think that would work out so well. I think they would need roof.
I mean,
I think that's-
I'm just going off the maps and.
And I'm going off, we know how these people drive in Michigan.
That's what insurance is for.
Again, the commercials seem to lend themselves pretty well to make this discussion.
Yeah,
And then we can determine whether or not,
it's safe and.
yeah, it is as a totality of the site plan,
Mhm.
whether or not it works for your site and your place.
Yeah.
Anything else on
I
solar
agree.
regulations?
I agree.
Okay, correspondence, open discussion for issues not on the agenda, correspondence. A1 here is the 2023 calendar. We have every time, showing us the Zoom links and all that. And then it looks like items 2 through 8 are all, non-conforming.
So one of the things that we've been plagued by with the multifamily homes are a lack of records. So one of the things the code enforcement officer and I are trying to do is make sure that these go into your agenda, the city council agenda. And then hopefully next year, go into a new master plan. So that we won't be having the same discussion 20, 30, 40 years from now. So that's one thing that we'll warn you about is we are budgeting for about half of the master plan update this year. So that would then hopefully be accomplished in budget year 24, 25. You know, one of the reasons is because you guys are eventually gonna have a new city manager. I want them to have at least 1 year under their belt before they got into the master plan update. But I've never been a fan of the master plan that we currently have. It was done by the previous planner, I think. Just was never well done, so. But it's gonna be a massive rewrite and we're budgeting probably in the $40,000 to $50,000 range for that. So, at some point, these will become part of that, and then you guys can deal with the non-conforming issue over decades.
Quick question about the non-conforming on these houses. Is it the same where if they burnt down, they could not build it could only go back to single story, correct?
Not single story. So
I mean, single residence, I'm sorry.
yeah, so it's a fairly complicated issue, but the majority of the problem is in the R1 single family zoning district. People took old single family homes, put up walls, split them into multi. The overwhelming majority of these homes, we have no evidence to show that they ever got zoning approval.
Right.
So what we're basically doing with the city council is offering them the chance to declare that it's legal, create the evidence, and then declaring it to be lawful non-conforming, as opposed to illegal.
Mhm.
So the problem for them is under lawful non-conforming, if it burns down to 60% or greater of its value, it can only be rebuilt in such a way that it's now legal in the district.
That's what I was,
So if it burns down, it basically has to become a single family home or some other use that's legal in a single family district.
over 60.
I also did put the city attorney letter in there regarding Tractor Supply Company's outdoor storage. That occurred before I was here. I don't know what the impetus of that was. But one of the site plans I hope to have in front of you guys here shortly is with the family farm and home. Basically, they have created an outdoor storage area on the west of their building. Again, I don't know if that was ever approved of, but it's starting to creep over lines and make it very difficult to drive back there. So what I'm hoping to do is have this board review a number of types of outdoor storage for them. Outdoor storage on the side of the building where it currently is, outdoor storage on the rear of the building, and then some trailer outdoor storage. And then they want to put in a greenhouse, temporary greenhouse on a spring and summer basis. From my reading under the ordinances, it doesn't appear to be legal. But that's, I guess, something you guys can work out with the planner. So I just wanted you to see this letter to see how they dealt with the issue with Tractor Supply Company when you're dealing with family farmers.
Okay, that takes us to the correspondence. Then item B, staff comments, city managers first.
Yeah, so Mr. Merlington, sorry to disappoint, but you came back just in time to see me go. My last day is technically Monday. I have offered to stay on for an additional couple weeks if council needs it. They've given me no indication one way or the other what they're gonna do, so we'll see on Thursday. But you know, this board has done a ton of work over the last 7 years. This, you know, the city's planning and zoning was a mess 7 years ago. And I was having a discussion with first not the right place here, but the right place is one of these, you know, countywide economic development corporations who tries to bring in these big developments. And it's not gone unnoticed that our laws have changed to be more business. I'd like to think that all the businesses that we've brought into the community and even the improvements in the aesthetics of the community have improved. Certainly our tax base has improved over the last 7 years. So I appreciate all the hard work you guys have done, and hopefully you guys continue to do what accomplished for the last 7 years.
Thank you. Any comments from the city clerk? Excuse me, planning commission members, any comments?
I would like to say, thank you for your time and attention to the details, Mr. Walker, and best of luck to you in the future.
Can we entice you to stay with a new dog?
My wife's been trying that for years. Actually, the community I'm moving to has a limitation on dogs that is less than I currently have. So I can't move into the community.
How many dogs do they allow?
3.
Okay.
We have 4.
I was gonna say, I thought you had like 6.
Not just 1. If it was up to my wife, we'd have way more than 6.
Are you allowed to have more than 3 kids or?
Yeah, so try limiting kids in the law. That could cause some problems.
Worked in China.
Not sure it did work in China.
Okay, so then, yeah, let me echo Ms. Naparowski, as far as thank you for don't want to say thank you for your service. That sounds weird, but, thank you for, all the work you've put in, which I know there's gotta been at least 1 week or 2 that you did over 40 hours. So, that there's a lot of stuff that we've plowed through in the last 7 years, so. Thank you for all your attention to detail, as you said, and the just diligence to, put yourself into some not so, pleasant situations sometimes in order to try to get what is best for the city. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, moving on, report of the city council representative.
We got a lot of heavy lifting that we're doing and a lot of pissing people off. Probably not gonna stop for a while. Also, we were still working on the apartment, complex. That will come back to us. Hopefully, once we get everything squared away. Cause they changed some things, so we'll have to review a site plan again. And they know that. I think that's all that's gonna end up back here that we have right now. What's in, working on a new well. And stuff like that, so,
Turn up your front yards with all the
Yeah.
sidewalks and.
yeah, especially on our road. But, it'll look nice and it'll be more walkable, so, and that's all thanks to Mike and grants and I didn't even know there were grants available until he came, so I don't think we have got that many, in the past, so all that stuff is things that we checked into and we were able to get, so that's a good thing.
So do they have a schedule yet for Main Street, or is that just, the funding just got approved, I seen, but,
So we're just kind of in the final stages before we actually bid it out.
oh, okay.
Engineers are well aware that they should be done in the downtown by, what is it, October 6th?
Yeah.
So they're aware, you know, it's just, this is one of those projects that takes forever.
And they're gonna divert the traffic differently.
Yeah, so I think the original proposal was not approved of by MDOT, so they're gonna send you the official route like 6 times further away.
It'll be great to see a new Main Street on Red Flannel Day.
How
Some
much
Red
are-
Flannel Day, whichever one.
Well, hopefully by this year.
How much are they doing?
I believe it's from Church Street to 18 Mile.
Not from Muskegon?
So from Church south to Muskegon's actually concrete.
Oh, that's right. It is right in front of Admiral. It is. Okay. That's right. I just thought about that when you said, I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, it's not all the way to Church Street, is it?
Believe it.
Yeah, I think so.
At least where the asphalt starts is where.
Once you get over the tank treads in the road, I think it's concrete.
There's that terrible spot right there when you're going south.
Keep in mind that they're also redoing all the sidewalks on Main Street. So they're all gonna be ADA compliant. They're gonna be adding in those 3 curb bump outs to make crossing over Main Street easier. And then we're, city council hopefully will be paying Rick Stout to come up with some plans for some additional streetscaping on Main Street. More seating, more shade trees, I don't know if I'm pocket parks, but more areas where you can kind of sit down and enjoy being in downtown. So, yeah, that plus the pocket park at 17 North Main. I think there's gonna be a lot of transformation on Main Street.
I hope they'll do the lights like you had done this year for winter. I like that.
Yep, that's through the DDA. And I think they're proposing doing a little bit more on the street lights now. So the lights on the trees and then also on the street lights.
Oh, okay. Really good.
Okay, we don't have a report of the planning consultant, so we don't have a planning consultant tonight, so that leads us to 14, adjournment. So we're adjourned.